Controversial changes in iOS 7, the skeuomorphic design, departure, font, and motion sickness. The iOS 7 was released in September 2013 and it marked a significant departure from the previous versions of Apple's mobile operating system. While it was generally well received, it was not without controversy. You must have heard about people saying that iOS 6 was better than the iOS 7. I personally don't go with that, but it's worth taking a look back into that topic. Now, before getting into the video, let me introduce myself. So, this is Apple Podcast, and all I do over here is post videos about Apple, answering your questions. So, please consider subscribing if you're one of these tech fans. I have another channel to relax yourself, the link to which will be given in the description below. So, without further ado, let's get into the video. So, before getting into iOS 7, we have to talk a bit about the iOS 6, which was released in 2012 and featured what's called a skeuomorphic user interface, meaning elements of the operating system were designed to resemble real-life objects. For example, in the Notes app, you would type on a virtual notepad with yellow-lined paper bound by brown leather. And the Newsstand app, you'd find a virtual bookshelf finished in a light brown wood texture. Now, skeuomorphic design elements had been around since the very first iPhone in 2007, so it became an essential part of what defined the iPhone. Scott Forstall was in charge for the development of one of the main features of the iOS 6, Apple Maps. The Apple Maps replaced the Google Maps, but it had a lot of issues ranging from inaccurate data, wrong representation, etc. If you know that, then it's not hard to understand why Scott was fired from the Apple soon later. Tim Cook sent an apology letter to the customers. If you had seen my previous video, then you must know about Apple Maps issue and how Forstall denied an apology letter. If not, I'll give a link in the description. You can watch that after this video. As Forstall left the company a month later, Jonathan Ive was put in charge of the iOS team and Craig Federighi was put in charge of the macOS development team. Ive was not a fan of skeuomorphism like Forstall. One of the most significant changes in iOS 7 was the new design language. This software lacked the skeuomorphic design and was meant to be simplistic. The skeuomorphic design language was popularized by Scott Forstall, who was the senior vice president of iOS software at Apple from 2007 to 2012. Forstall was known for his love of skeuomorphism and was responsible for the design of many of the pre-iOS 7 apps, such as the Notes app that looked like a yellow legal pad and the Game Center app that looked like a green felt gaming tablet. However, with the departure of Forstall in 2012, Apple moved away from skeuomorphism and towards a flatter and simpler design language. For example, the Notes app looked like a yellow legal pad, complete with lines and torn top edge. However, with iOS 7, Apple moved away from this design philosophy and went with a flatter and simpler design. Many people were unhappy with the new design language. Some felt that the new design was too stark and lacked personality. Others complained that it was harder to distinguish between different elements on the screen because everything looked the same. Some people even accused Apple of copying the designs of Microsoft's Windows Phone operating system. Now, after skeuomorphism was removed, iOS was totally flat. And let's take the Notes app for example. As I mentioned before, it had a yellow background and a notebook feel, whereas now the app is just a blank screen. While we've covered a lot of ground, there are still many other factors that we could dive into. Unfortunately, due to time constraints, we won't be able to cover them all in this video. However, we'll be sure to explore them in another video, so stay tuned. Before we wrap up, I'd love to hear your thoughts on the removal of skeuomorphism. Share your opinions in the comments below. That's it for today's video. Thank you for watching. If you found this video helpful or interesting, please consider liking, sharing and subscribing to our channel. I'll see you in the next one.